Myself, Dr. Venkateshwarlu, pulmonologist, Khammam, Telangana State. Join us for an exciting start with expert session with Professor David Felding. Dr. David Felding is the Director of Thoracic Medicine and a Director of Bronchology and Interventional Pulmonology, Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital, Brisbane, Australia. Sir, please join us.
Do we have to sample only the PET positive nodes, or even the PET negative nodes has to be sampled for staging of lung cancer?
For staging, we still say that nodes larger than a centimetre in short axis should be sampled regardless of PET status. This is particularly true in relatively slow growing tumours with relatively low PET avidity, such as slow growing adenocarcinomas. Which might have less likelihood of PET uptake in the mediastinum. So so I think it is still the same basic teaching that we progress from an N3, a distant N3 to an N2 and then to an N1, and using Rose slides to determine the presence or absence of malignant cells.
Do you feel there is any additional yield of 19 gauge needle or the core biopsy needle as compared to the conventional 22 and versus the 25 gauge needle?
At this stage, the short answer is no. There's no firm recommendation on particular needle caliber for the yield of malignant cells. It may be in the future that we try to get some sort of morphology correlation of immunohistochemistry in samples that have got slightly more core-like tissue, for example, in PD-L1 staining. But at this point in time, all of the needle sizes are generally regarded as being relatively equivalent. There was some slight favourability of a 21 gauge over a 22 gauge, particularly in terms of the ability to get molecular testing. But overall, in terms of the yield of malignant cells, it hasn't been demonstrated that a particular size is better than another.
And what is the role of routine use of elastography in these malignant lymph nodes? Can there be an increase in the yield when we use an elastography targeted sampling of the nodes?
I think it's very interesting. I admire the papers on elastography. I haven't used it as much in the clinic. I think it's a very interesting question, because elastography to some extent is, the question has been whether, for example, in a staging procedure, it can be used to allow a doctor to avoid sampling a small difficult node. For example, if the elastography suggested a benign node, it might be possible to avoid sampling. But I think in the future, there could well be an exploration of exploring within large nodes those parts of the node that are more able to deliver samples for molecular testing. So I think the short answer is there is somewhat of a learning curve to become familiar with doing it. But it's a very interesting technique, and I think we should continue to explore that as a possible additive to the use of Doppler testing.
Should all the cell block samples that we derive from the EBS TBNA should be subjected for upfront testing for all molecular mutational markers, like a platform like an NGS, or do you do a sequential testing for the molecular markers in your routine practice?
It depends on what your pathology service has decided to do. I think most centres now use panel because the amounts of DNA required for that are not as much as they were, 5-10 years ago, and so that it's more suited to their workflow to just have one panel which can be utilised across a broad range of tumour types. Including other non-lung tumours. So I think it really just depends on the sort of economic or workflow decisions that your departments have chosen. And I think, generally speaking, this has allowed a reduction in the number of repeat tests that labs have to do. So most labs would tend to do panel sequencing, which will include EGFR and immunohistochemistry for ALK and ROS. But in the future, the question will be how large a panel and whether exome or whole genome sequencing can be just as economic. We're a bit of a ways off that, but certainly some of the larger centres have adopted whole exome even now.
If we get a repeated negativity in the EBUS TBNA samples, like what will be our approach next? Like despite all the passes, multiple passes, and turning the angle of the needle, and if we still get a negative node with a high suspicion of malignancy, what would be the next approach in the management?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult problem. Obviously, there's the possibility in that circumstance that it is a truly negative node, despite being PET-avid. Where a patient is surgical, obviously, there's the option that that node will be included in a surgical staging procedure. I think it becomes a discussion point then for a multidisciplinary meeting, and whether the further analysis is required, for example, with a mediastinoscopy, which would be rarely performed now, but if that was the case, if it really did make it a treatment-altering, if it was going to be a treatment-altering decision, a mediastinoscopy is possible, but I think it often comes down to how will it change the management in that particular case if one assumes that it's a positive node.
One more question, sir. Like, whenever there is a recurrence of a tumor, have you seen a histological or a cytological transformation of a non-small cell to a small cell in a recurrent tumor? A case of a non-small cell carcinoma who has been treated again shows to you with a PET-avid node. You do a EBUS TBNA, and have you seen a histological or cytological transformation to a small cell carcinoma now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's a couple of issues there. One is the real transformation, as you mentioned, but the question is, has the initial treatment kind of selected out malignant cells which were somewhat less abundant in the original tumour? So, it was originally a mixed malignancy, and as the case progressed, one clone sort of overtook the others. So I think your point is very well made, and we're in this era now where we should have a low threshold to rebiopsy, and there's a lot of reasons to rebiopsy. One being, of course, as we mentioned, to look for the development of resistance to TKIs, but there's other reasons, and in particular where a tumour starts to behave very aggressively. One might suspect a neuroendocrine clone has commenced. And certainly a lot of the big research programs are looking at the way peripheral blood markers do correlate with the tissue samples. And in time, perhaps in these circumstances, we'll be more reliant on blood testing and blood circulating tumour DNA and other peripheral blood markers, as opposed to having to go back and take tissue. But the short answer is yes. If the clinical parameters don't add up, do have a low threshold to resample.
And one last question, sir. What do you think will be the future where EBUS guided TBNA can be used to instill intratumoral chemotherapy? There are few translational studies that are coming up. Like, your insights on that, sir? Like, what will be the role of a EBUS TBNA for a malignancy where we put an intratumoral chemotherapy?
I don't consider myself an authority on that at all, but I think as pulmonologists, we know the importance of lymph nodes in the pathogenesis and the prognosis of lung cancer. And we know that ways to address the molecular events that are primarily happening in lymph nodes would actually make a lot of sense to us. And that includes not only chemotherapy, but vaccine type therapies will ultimately potentially have a role here, because we know the importance of draining lymph nodes in the way that the body's immune response as a whole is derived and developed. And I think we need to be really watching what the scientists are doing in this space, because we sample lymph nodes all the time, and we sort of sometimes forget that these are these are producing active cells and active components in the immune system. And so we're sort of in the box seat, if you like, to help our scientists to interpret and perhaps in the future assist them in starting treatments directed at lymph nodes.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for your patient answering, sir.